Welcome to the deep dive. We plunge into sources and pull out the key nuggets just for you. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey into an ancient Chinese text. It's all about strategy, cunning, the 36 Stratagems. Our source is mainly the Wikipedia article and our mission.
Well, it's to unpack these strategies, figure out where they came from, and how they were meant to be used, on battlefields, but maybe elsewhere too. We want to give you that shortcut to being informed, maybe with a few surprising facts, maybe keep it a little fun.
Right, and just to give you the big picture, the 36 Stratagems, it's basically this Chinese essay. It lays out a whole series of strategies. We're talking politics, war, even just civil interactions. But the real focus, it's on cunning, deception, psychological angles. People often compare it to Sun Tzu's Art of War, but this one really leans into outsmarting your opponent, not just overpowering them. It's about thinking, several steps ahead. Okay, so steeped in cunning, I like that. But let's start right there, the name. 36 Stratagems. Why 36? That sounds so specific. Was it like someone actually counted out exactly 36 tricks? Or is there more to it?
That's a really good question. And yeah, there's definitely a story there. The name, it actually pops up in the Book of Qi, specifically in the biography of a general named Wang Jingzi. He served the Southern Qi dynasty. So the Emperor Ming, he got paranoid, started executing people at court. Wang Jingzi thought, okay, I'm probably next, and he rebelled. Then he hears the crown prince has fled, and Wang apparently said something like, of the 36 stratagems of Lord Tan, retreat was his best. You father and son should run for sure.
Lord Tan. So he's referring to General Tan Doji, the one famous for retreating successfully after a failed attack. So Wang Jingzi was basically saying, look, even this great general knew when to run for it, using it as an example.
Exactly. Spot on. And the key thing is, in that context, 36 wasn't meant literally. It was more like saying numerous stratagems or all the strategies, a figure of speech. And the number itself, 36, it wasn't random. It connects back to the I Ching. In the I Ching, 6 is the number for yin, which is often linked to, darker schemes, cunning, that sort of thing in military thought. 36 is 6 squared. So it became this metaphor for like a whole lot of clever, maybe underhanded strategies, a full toolkit, if you will.
Wow. Okay. So the name itself is an ancient idiom tied to the I Ching. That's fascinating. So if the name was already around, does that mean the actual list of proverbs, the specific stratagems we have now, they were probably put together later, like collected over time to fit the name?
That's precisely the thinking. Yeah. The consensus is that the content, the proverbs, the explanations, they likely came from a mix of written records and oral traditions. They just sort of coalesced later on. And some stratagems even refer to things that happened in Sun Bin's time, which is like 150 years after Sun Tzu. So clearly developed over a long period.
As for how we even have this text today, well, the story goes that an original hand-copied version was found in Shaanxi province. Nobody knows exactly when or who wrote it down. A local publisher printed it in 1941, apparently, but it didn't really hit the mainstream until 1961. There was a review in the Guangdong Daily newspaper, and suddenly, boom, everyone wanted a copy. Lots of reprints became much more popular.
Quite a path to prominence. Okay, so let's get into the structure then. How is this collection actually organized? Is it just, a list of 36 things, or is there some logic to it? Oh, there's definitely logic. It's quite structured. It starts with a preface. Then you have 6 chapters, and each chapter contains exactly 6 stratagems. Makes 36. There's also an afterword, but apparently it's incomplete. And the really smart part is how it's divided, the first 3 chapters. Those generally cover tactics for when you're already in a good position, an advantageous situation. Then the last 3 chapters switch gears. They focus on stratagems for when you're at a disadvantage, when things aren't going your way. The original text is very concise, typical classical Chinese. Each proverb gets maybe a sentence or two explaining how it applies militarily. And these proverbs, they're often linked back to specific battles or stories from Chinese history, especially the Warring States and Three Kingdoms periods. Lots of historical context baked in.
That makes a lot of sense. Knowing when to use which tactic is half the battle, right? Okay, let's dive into some specifics. Chapter 1, Winning Stratagems. What really jumps out at you there?
Okay, in winning stratagems, 2 really classic ones are besiege Wei to rescue Zhao, and make a sound in the east, then strike in the west. The first one, besiege Wei to rescue Zhao. The idea is, look, if your enemy is super strong head-on, don't just bang your head against their strongest point. Instead, find something else they value, something vulnerable, maybe an ally, a key resource, and attack that. This forces them to pull back from their strong position to defend their weakness. Then maybe you can engage them when they're stretched, tired, demoralized.
Hmm.
The insight, I think, is that power isn't always about direct force. It's about understanding your opponent's vulnerabilities, which might be, far away from their main army.
Right. Shifting the fight to ground that you choose, not just meeting them where they're strongest. That takes some real understanding of what they care about. And the second one, make a sound in the east, then strike in the west. That sounds like pure misdirection.
It absolutely is a classic feint. And it works because it plays on basic psychology, right? You make a big show, lots of noise, visible movement in one area of the east. You get the enemy to focus all their attention, maybe move their troops there. And then you launch your real attack somewhere else, entirely the west, where they're unprepared, poorly defended. The key isn't just the surprise, it's actively manufacturing the distraction. You're controlling what they see or what they think is important. You see echoes of this everywhere, right? Politics, marketing. Make noise here to do something quietly over there.
Yeah, definitely. Some of these, though, they seem to move beyond just winning a fight to more about, like, dealing with a tricky opponent. What about Chapter 2, Enemy Dealing Stratagems? Anything stand out there?
Oh, absolutely. Openly repair the gallery roads, but sneak through the passage of Changkang. This one's a masterpiece of complex deception. So the idea is you make a big, obvious, maybe time-consuming show of doing something, repairing the roads, something that looks legitimate but draws attention. This lulls the enemy. They see this long project. They think they know what you're up to. Meanwhile, you're preparing a completely different, secret, and likely much faster attack from an unexpected direction, Changkang. The decoys have to be convincing, right, to really pull their focus. The insight is that the best deception often layers a slow, visible action over a fast, hidden one. And what's really funny is the modern meaning. Apparently, sneaking through Changkang can also mean, like, having an affair or doing something illegal. That tells you something about its association with sneaky, hidden stuff.
That's quite an evolution. It really underscores the hidden intent part. There's another one in that chapter, hide a knife behind a smile. That also feels very subtle, almost sinister.
Yeah, it does. Hide a knife behind a smile. It's all about disarming charm, really. You act friendly, agreeable, you flatter your enemy, gain their trust, make them feel comfortable around you. And then, once their guard is down, you strike. Secretly. Decisively.
Yeah.
The strategic point here is leveraging that human tendency, We naturally relax around people we like or trust. It warns you that the biggest threats might not look threatening at all. You have to look past the surface.
These are getting deep into the psychology of it all. Okay, how about Chapter 3, Offensive Stratagems? When you're ready to actually make a move.
Right, taking the initiative. Lure the tiger down the mountain is a brilliant one here. It basically says, don't attack an enemy who has a strong positional advantage, their mountain, their fortress, whatever. It's too costly. Instead, you figure out a way to make them leave that position. Lure them out onto terrain where you have the advantage, or at least where their advantage is gone. The core idea is that sometimes the best defense isn't a direct assault, but strategically shifting the battlefield itself. You negate their strength before you even fight.
Like trying to get a stubborn cat off the high shelf. You don't climb up and wrestle it. You tempt it down with something irresistible on the floor.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. You change the incentives.
Okay, and then there's one that sounds almost paradoxical.
In order to capture, one must let loose. What's that about? It sounds risky.
It does sound risky, but it's psychologically very clever. The thinking is, if you corner an enemy completely, given absolutely no way out, they'll fight like demons.
Desperation.
Survival instinct. So instead, you deliberately leave them what looks like an escape route. Right. A little bit of hope. As they start thinking about escape, their will to fight diminishes. They get focused on getting away. Then, either that escape route leads into a trap you've prepared, or they just become easier to capture because they're not fighting with that same ferocity. The insight is pretty profound. Sometimes, seeming to give something up, offering a perceived way out, can actually be the key to breaking an opponent's spirit and achieving total victory more easily. That's fascinating. Okay, then Chapter 4, Mixed Warfare Stratagems. These seem to focus more on weakening the enemy indirectly, sort of undermining them.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Remove the firewood from under the pot is the perfect example. It's the essence of the indirect approach. Instead of hitting their army head-on, you go after what enables them to fight. You attack their supply lines, their resources, their morale, maybe their political support. You take away the firewood so the pot, their war effort, cools down. It's like, we might say, cut off their funding or disrupt their logistics, attack the foundation, not just the structure.
Right, almost like stealing their thunder and hitting the source of their power. And what about disturb the water and catch a fish?
Ah, another classic. This one's about creating chaos. You deliberately muddy the waters, sow confusion, introduce uncertainty into a situation. Once everything's unclear and people are disoriented, then you make your move. You exploit the chaos to achieve goals you couldn't have reached when things were stable and clear. The insight is that chaos isn't just something to react to. A strategist can actually create it to open up opportunities. Think about how fast rumors or bad information can spread when things are already messy.
Very relevant today.
Okay.
Chapter 5, Combined Stratagems. These sound like they might involve even more, sort of psychological play, playing with perceptions.
You're absolutely right. Feign madness but keep your balance is a prime example here. This means pretending to be incompetent, maybe irrational, even a bit crazy. You confuse your opponents about your real intentions, your actual capabilities. The goal is to make them underestimate you. Think you're not a serious threat, so they lower their guard, make mistakes. And then you make your real move. The deep insight is just how powerful being underestimated can be. If you lower expectations intentionally, you can achieve surprise more easily.
That requires some serious acting skills and discipline, I imagine. And then there's make the host and the guests exchange roles. That sounds like a subtle takeover.
It is, and it's incredibly relevant in business or organizational politics, not just war. It's about starting in a subordinate or outsider position, the guest. You infiltrate, you join the group, you seem harmless, you build trust, gain influence slowly from the inside, you learn the system, and then gradually you maneuver until you've effectively taken over leadership, you've become the host. The point is that power doesn't always come from a direct challenge. It can be gained incrementally, subtly, by understanding and using the internal dynamics of a system.
Wow. Okay, finally, Chapter 6, Defeat Stratagems. This must be about what to do when things are looking bad, which, let's face it, is often the hardest time to think strategically.
Absolutely. These are crucial for knowing how to handle adversity, minimize losses, maybe set up a future comeback. The beauty trap, or honeypot, is probably one of the most famous, maybe infamous, from this chapter. The basic idea is sending attractive people, traditionally women, in the historical context to disrupt the enemy leadership. It works on several levels, right? The target might get distracted, neglect their duties. Rivalries might erupt among others vying for attention. Jealousy and plotting can arise among other court members. The deeper insight isn't just about beauty, but about how potent human desires, distractions, and internal conflicts can be. You can use these universal weaknesses to sow chaos and weaken an enemy from within, sometimes more effectively than any army could.
So it's really about exploiting those fundamental human drives to create internal fragmentation. Okay, and then the big one, the maybe most famous of all. When defeat seems certain.
Right. If all else fails, retreat. Stratagem number 36. It sounds simple, maybe obvious, but it's often the hardest one for leaders to actually do. Pride gets in the way. But the logic is clear. When defeat is inevitable, fighting on just means more losses. Surrender means total defeat, losing everything. Compromise might feel better, but it's still half defeat. You're still losing ground. But retreat, strategic withdrawal, that means you save your strength. You preserve your forces, your resources. You live to fight another day, maybe when conditions are better. The core wisdom is knowing when to cut your losses. Prioritizing long-term survival over short-term pride or a doomed defense. The famous saying sums it up. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing is best.
Fleeing is best when appropriate. Okay, so wrapping this up, what does all this ancient wisdom mean for us, listening today? Why should you care about generals and emperors and these old tricks?
Well, connecting it all, the thing is, these aren't just dusty historical tactics for battlefields. That's not really the point for us. So many of these stratagems, they're about cunning, deception, yeah, but also about understanding weaknesses, leveraging situations, reading people. They offer pretty timeless insights into human interaction, right? Negotiations, strategy in business, politics, even just navigating complex social situations. They're fundamentally about recognizing patterns of human behavior and influence, how people are motivated, how they react under pressure, how easily perception can be shaped. You probably see versions of these playing out all the time, even if you don't label them as stratagems.
Yeah, that's a great point. This deep dive really does feel like a shortcut to understanding some timeless ways of thinking strategically. From the feints and misdirection to the deeper psychological stuff, it really shows how much human nature and the principles of strategy kind of stay the same, don't they? It's less about the specific battles and more about those enduring patterns.
Exactly. And maybe that leaves you with a question to think about. We live in this world overflowing with information, right? It's complex, often confusing.
Mhm.
So, how might understanding these basic principles of strategy, maybe to get ahead, or maybe just to recognize when they're being used on you, how might that help you navigate your own life, your own complex situations? What subtle stratagems might you bump into, or even use without thinking about it day to day? And could being aware of them maybe give you a clearer view of what's really going on?